Please listen carefully.
Hi, I'm Paul Frields.
And I'm Dave Guzman.
And welcome back to Practical Bass. Every week we go into a new topic to help you, the working bassist, elevate your gigs and gear. This week, Dave, what are we gonna talk about?
We're going to talk about singing and playing.
Ooh, I like this.
The duo.
Yeah. Now we actually both do this.
We do.
Yeah. So what kind of brought this to mind as a topic?
For me, I think that there's certainly value that's added when you're really talking about, being that gigging musician and being able to say, yes, I can do, even if it's just backup, like not even talking about front vocals. This started for me, not too long ago, but about 5 years ago, where someone in the band said, we need an extra backup vocalist, and more or less told me that I had to do it, and kind of getting through that and the whole journey of getting to a point where, now I have a process. That's a journey. Like there are shortcuts in there looking back.
Right, exactly. Well, so, I guess there's the element of this that is based on, the technique of singing or the technique of playing. And I guess that's not really our focus here today, right?
Yeah, that's really like this episode is not necessarily about the technicalities of how to do that. We're not really here to give vocal lessons. That would be somewhat challenging, and maybe, I would say, at least for me, like I wouldn't be I wouldn't feel like I'd have that the experience to talk about, how to get that your voice like in a place where you're at a next level.
Yeah, and I mean, we can't teach people how to carry a tune either, right? I mean, you have to, in order to play and sing, you need to be able to play and you need to be able to sing, right? You need to have those elements before you can do both. You need to be able to do either.
Step one, do those things.
Right.
But this is really about how do you incorporate both of them so this way you add value, and what are some of the things that what are some of those challenges that come about. So I guess, to start this off, we should talk about really what's uncomfortable about it. Like, what makes you uncomfortable?
Yeah, because I mean, not everyone can do it, right?
Right.
I mean, and that there is a level of discomfort or a starting point that you have to go through. Like, when you get started playing and singing, you're going to realize it's another level of challenge versus just playing, right? Because you have to kind of keep the concentration going. You have to be able to play the lines in the bass part. And now you're talking about laying a vocal on top of that. You want the vocal to sound decent. You want it to be,
right.
Your pitch to be good.
Right.
Right. And, and you want to be able to articulate the words and not have it just be, kind of mush, unless you're going like, backing vocals like ahs or oohs or whatever.
Right.
Right. So that is not an easy challenge, right? It's the kind of the next level beyond just being a player is now try and do that while you're singing. Right.
Right. And which one do you prioritize? And
right. Exactly. And it's, that stuff is not easy. And even the greats, right? People would look at, there are a million players that you could point at for this, right? But, I'm sure one that bassists look at is, like the legendary Geddy Lee from Rush, who is playing insanely complicated bass lines and then singing. And sometimes his bass lines and singing go together and sometimes they don't. And even someone like him, right? He's got to go back and rehearse the things that he's recorded, right? I've listened to interviews where he talks about his process doing this, and it's not like he just hops straight into the rehearsals for the tour. and is ready to go. Oh yeah, I'll just do what I did in the studio, because a lot of times that all those things have been laid down separately.
Right.
And so he actually goes back and he has to learn how to do those things together.
Yeah.
And that gave me a little bit of hope, right? When I was trying to learn how to do this. I mean, you asked about discomfort, and I think the thing that's uncomfortable for me is when you have a wildly syncopated bass line versus a straight ahead melody, right? Or vice versa, right? Where the bass is maybe straight ahead or in some way, but then the vocal is very free or syncopated, right? Where they're just like in rhythmic opposition to each other.
Right.
So that's one thing I think that has been uncomfortable for me about doing it and learning to do that regularly. Another one is learning to be at ease with my own voice and not hating it, right? I'm always in the back of my head, I'm thinking about the qualities of my voice that I don't like and hearing them accentuated or feeling like they're accentuated. And maybe it's just in my head, but
Sure.
I'm feeling like it's really bad. And then I'm looking around at my bandmates thinking, I wonder if they know how bad it is.
Right.
Like, are they all thinking, my God, I wish he would stop? Like,
It's funny how our, like, the goal for the voice is just that you don't hate it.
yeah,
You're just trying to get it out of that element of not wanting to, like, cut your vocal cords out. Like, I'm done.
just getting to that point where, you can not hate it. Like, it's a really low bar to set. And I struggle sometimes just getting over that. And in doing that, right, you described this in a couple other episodes that we've done, that, when you have an issue like that, it takes you out of the headspace. It takes you out of your game, off your A game, and you can lose your concentration, right? You stop being alert to the things that you need to be, you start making mistakes, and now all of a sudden, you're in that, that negative feedback loop of you make a mistake and now you feel like, oh, I'm not doing well. Now I'm thinking about how I'm not doing well. Oh, now I just made another mistake because I wasn't concentrating. And, it just becomes this snowball effect.
That's right.
It's really easy to get knocked off that when you're trying to essentially do two things at once and do them both, passably well.
Right. At a level that you would expect out of, like, the degree of professionalism that you're trying to bring to the band and that you're trying to bring to the performance.
Right.
Yeah,
right.
I totally agree. I mean, I think those are, like, spot on. Those are the issues that I'm challenged with as well. The other piece, I think, for me is that and this is, I guess everyone's going to have a different set of skills or natural skills, or sometimes, whether you've developed them or not. But I know with me, it's it's like the projection, right? Like getting my voice out there at a volume that's somewhat equal to maybe other vocalists that's they're the vocalist, or they just have like a natural, they just have a natural way of delivering their voice and their tone, and just at least like blending in. So when you don't have a voice that carries like that, it's not like you have an instrument that you can tweak certain things. You're just kind of given what you have. So then you have to learn to work around that.
Right. Work with the tool that you have and kind of be able to, get around its limitations.
Yeah.
And your voice changes over time too, right? I mean, like, I'm now 46 and my voice isn't what it was when I was 25. You look at great singers or great performers in entertainment, and that's not unheard of, right?
Right.
I mean, there are people whose voices were equally amazing throughout their entire career. Like you look at Sinatra, for example, who one of the great singers of all time, and his voice was so consistent. That was what he did, though, right? All he did was this and I don't mean to belittle it or diminish it in any way. To be a great singer by itself is an immense accomplishment. And he's truly one of the greats. And there are many others as well.
Right. Because there are a lot of singers, professional singers out there that will say, to some extent, everybody's got a voice. You just have to find what that is. Find that whatever's natural to you. That's your voice, and it is what it is.
Yeah.
But find it and, really hold on to it.
Right.
But then there's also like, so for me, and again, I don't really want to get too much on the technical side of it, but I know for me, I have a tendency to go flat, right? It's like that's one of my things that I have to deal with.
Mm-hmm.
And part of it is also because I'm so focused on the bass that I'm not either breathing properly or I'm not paying attention to where my voice is at until I start to hear it. I'm maybe mid-line, or I'm listening to a recording after the fact.
Yeah.
And I think, oh man, like it was flat. Like at that point I thought it was okay, but now it wasn't. And yeah, there's like things that you can do to like fix that, but it's a matter of really, like, part of it is just that you're juggling two things.
Yeah. Yeah. And that juggling, I mean, it takes work, right? I mean, it takes practice, just like, real juggling, right? Juggling anything, or, any sort of task that is complex, as you approach that juggling routine, what are the kind of things that you do to set yourself up for success when you have to sing and play a song?
Yeah. I have a friend of mine who I guess this started maybe 5 years ago or so, and his name is John Buck, and he plays bass. And when I first saw him, he was actually the lead vocalist for it was a reggae band, but his vocals were on point, his bass playing was on point, and as a bassist, I'm looking at this as like it's an impossibility,
like the holy grail of performing.
Yeah, like how? And so I caught up with him, and I still like remember his response was so like very bass, like short and like right to the point. And he just said 16th notes and then turned and walked away.
Oh.
And I had no idea what that meant at first. And then so then I thought about it, and it's just breaking when I do, when I've got to prepare for something that I'm going to sing, it's breaking it down right into 16th notes so that I know where my vocal, like when the word drops compared to when that beat drops compared to when the bass note drops.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh God, that's probably one of the greatest quotes I think I've ever heard about trying to do this.
Yeah. Yeah. And I love that it was just one little 16th notes.
Yeah. Knowing how to subdivide time is the key to being able to do the more complex tasks that you have to do, right?
Exactly.
I mean, it's important to know as a bass player to begin with, but it's crucial anytime either the bass line or the singing gets complicated.
Right.
Subdividing the time is like, that's the key. Boy, that guy's a genius.
Yep.
I want to meet him and shake his hand.
That's right. That's right. The other, I think there are two other things that I do to prepare. And one of them is that if there's a song, especially if I'm the lead vocalist, is that I just sing it everywhere, like everywhere private.
Yeah. Like in the car, in the shower.
Car, shower, when everybody leaves the house.
Right.
And, just work out all the kinks. And part of that is also learning the words, right?
Yeah.
Because there's that whole other side of singing that there are words and you don't always want to look at a tablet. Like it takes away from that coolness when you're reading.
Yeah. I still use that as a crutch on stage. I use the tablet, and I really have, it's one of the things that I've kind of put on my list of over the next year or two to kind of wean myself away from that and learn the lyrics more carefully, right? Like lines in a play or something like that. I was never an actor or anything like that, or a forensic person or a speaker. So I never really learned that skill of, memorize the lines.
Yeah, and it's funny when you have that tablet up, but you're not even looking at it, but you still have it there. Like it's that safety blanket.
Yeah. I'm almost to that point, not quite, but I'm getting close to that point. It makes me feel like I'm just being a wuss about it.
You know what helps there is accidentally leaving your like tablet holder at home. That just throws you right in survival mode.
Do or die.
Make up the lyrics,
That's right.
Repeat first verse. And the other thing that I do is anytime if it is, especially if it's lead vocals, is whenever I'm practicing it, at the very end, I make sure that I stand and sing, because what that does is it changes your, when you sit and you play bass, right? And you're practicing, there's a comfort level. Like there's a certain muscle memory that's happening. It's a little easier to approach the bass. So you don't have to think about it so much. But then when you stand, the bass kind of drops a little bit. Mm-hmm. Your posture changes, and now you've opened up the vocal. So I at least spend some time before I'm going to perform it to be in a position as I would perform it.
Right, absolutely.
Get as close as I can without the people and the rest of the band, but get right, as close to that point as I can.
Because you're accentuating like your muscle memory on the bass, like you're making sure that that's identical as much as possible to your good practice runs.
Yes, exactly.
Wow, that's really insightful. I never really thought of that part of it, but it that kind of makes sense, because I realize when I've been practicing, like I went through this sort of very technical phase a couple years ago where I started doing a lot of adjustments to the way that I practiced, and how I set my my instruments, my accessories and things like that. One of the things I did was to adjust all the straps on my basses so that when I sit and when I stand up, the bass stays in exactly the same place.
Right.
And I realized it did have an effect. Like it made everything I was doing on stage a little bit easier, because it was capitalizing on all the practice time. Like the bass was no longer in a different place from the way I practiced it at home. And it really helped. So that's super insightful to have that, like that muscle memory then deliver when you're trying to concentrate on a second task in addition to the playing.
Exactly.
That's brilliant. That is brilliant.
What are some rules that you stick by, or processes that you have?
Well, practice a lot, and like sing everywhere I can. Right, like I'll have that stuff playing on my, in my car, or, while I'm at work, even coming in subconsciously while I'm doing other things. But I'll, spend dedicated practice time, just, go through the song and again, making sure that I have transitions right, being critical of my bass playing while I'm singing, and coming back and saying, I know I didn't nail the time on that line. So I go back and really work through it like many times.
Like actually being honest with your own.
Yeah. But I would also say you can't do this unless you know the part, right? Just like you said, you have to know the lyrics and you have to know the song. You have to have the bass part down. If you don't know the bass part, you can't start, I think, by, I'm going to learn how to sing the song and I'm going to learn how to play bass for the song at the same time. I don't think it's possible to do those things and not have it like vastly multiply the amount of time you have to spend on it. Learn the bass part first. That's what I do. I learn the bass part first, make sure I have that down. I've got it under my skin, and then I start on the vocal, right?
Yeah, because if you don't, you'll also have a tendency to simplify the bass line.
Yes.
Right. Where, it's like you take a beautiful bass line that's behind these vocals, and then you just end up like root noting it, because that's the way to like make that happen when you learn both at the same time.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I think when it comes to sort of taking that stuff apart, I'll do the same thing with the vocal and the bass line together, right? I'll try and, I might turn off the recording or whatever, and then sort of play it along a little slower and
Yep.
and then use that subdividing technique to think about like, where is my vocal landing as opposed to where the bass note lands. And so if the vocal's syncopated, like make sure I hit the note and then I hit the bass note, and then do it at a slow tempo and work it up.
Right.
There are all sorts of apps you can get nowadays on phones too to do this stuff. Like you can get music players for your phone or your other devices or whatever, your computer, where it'll play back the track. You know, at a certain point, it gets kind of ugly sounding, but you know, you can slow things down by, 75% or I should say slow things down to 75% of the speed.
Yeah.
And it still sounds relatively listenable. And if you can work at it at that volume and kind of bring the pace up, just like playing your bass part, you'll have more success that way.
Yeah. Yeah. I agree. Yeah. And even with those pieces, like if even dropping it 15% down, even at 85%, it's way more digestible. You see, there's a lot of clarity that pops out, and the sound of the audio still is fully intact.
Right.
And it's a big, just 15% is really a big difference.
Yeah, it can be huge, right? And that's going to set the stage for success. So, don't be afraid to slow that stuff down. I guess that's really the key.
So Paul, what advice would you have to those that are really just thinking about venturing into this world of singing and playing at the same time?
Yeah. First, keep it simple when you start. Like don't try and start by like learning Yes and Rush tunes or something like that. It's like trying to start playing bass by learning those things. Now, I'm not saying it can't be done. But it's a really high bar to set. And if you're not the kind of person who can really take a lot of disappointment without being disgruntled, it'll really make you feel like you can't do it when, really you should just start a little more simply and, have some, have a simple success and then build on that over time, right? That's really a better way to progress. And it keeps you from, being too hard on yourself, right? Which you don't need to be. Yeah. I would also say, strangely enough, there are other, I named progressive rock bands, right? Just out of habit.
Sure.
But by the same token, don't try this with Beatles either, right? Because don't be deceived, right? There's a reason that so many musicians revere that band, right? It is not easy to do that stuff either. Not to mention which there are like 3 or 4 parts in every song that you could pick from, to learn to sing and play.
Yeah.
And that'll teach you, right, so much harmony and a lot of things about structure and a million other things as well. But again, might be a little too hard to start with. I think starting with something like Pink Floyd or something is easy because the bass parts are relatively simple.
Yep.
You can get from things like Comfortably Numb, which is I think a pretty easy song to play and sing. The bass part's very simple.
Yeah.
Get a little bit harder to something like Money, which is in 7. And, where the bass kind of like keeps pumping along. And then, you graduate from that to other things. That's just one, one band. There are a million other things you could start with that are, easy enough. Find something that's, 3 or 4 chords in the song, a simple pop tune. And, where the bass part is like whole notes or, half notes or pumping eighths or something like that.
Yeah. Or where the vocals are dropping like on the 1, if the bass is dropping on the 1, like where it's where you can correlate the playing with the vocals.
Yeah.
With the vocal line.
Right. The bass line is not too different from the vocal line, or at least it's simple enough that it's kind of like more like a metronome and then you just sing over it. Yeah. That's absolutely a good way to start. And another thing is know your range, right? Everybody cannot sing every song, right? I talked about earlier about, the ravages of age on the voices that most of us have.
Right.
And, you may not be able to sing a song that you love, and, coming to grips with that is tough, but, realize there's a million great songs out there, and some of them are in everybody's range, right? Some of them,
Yep.
you pick a person and you can find songs that are in their range. So do something that's right for your voice.
Yeah.
I learned the hard way, like a few years back. I had kind of a protracted illness, like a sinus illness. It's nothing serious. Like, I don't want anybody out there worried that, like, I'm going to drop dead any minute. Dave will be doing the podcast by himself next episode. I just got my MRI results. What didn't go too well. Boy, that could get real morbid. Let's not do that. No, it's just like it was a sinus infection that kind of got bad and then, turned into a chest thing.
Right.
And I had a cough that lingered, and I kind of injured my voice from so much coughing.
Right.
Cause I wasn't good at like knowing how to either stop coughing or cough in a way that wasn't going through my vocal cords.
Yep.
And, it's taken me a few years to come back from that to the point where my voice is anywhere near what it used to be. So, don't strain yourself to practice the same way that you wouldn't like play through hand or wrist pain or carpal tunnel or something like that.
Right.
Don't do it with your voice. You only have one set of vocal cords. There's no such thing as vocal cord transplants. So
no, yeah, you can't go online and pick up a new one.
Yeah.
That's it.
Absolutely.
It is what it is.
Yeah. There's a million tips like that, but we're practical bass and not practical voice. But
right.
Yeah. So, what about advice that you would give to people who are kind of new to doing this?
Yeah, I think some basics are, for me, what really helped was to remember to breathe. Think about the breath. Like, that's the bottom of it. And, there's plenty of places you can go to learn on this side of it, but just know where the breath is, know where your power is coming from, and know where the sound is actually coming from. Like, what part of your body is bringing that.
Right. Are you in your diaphragm voice, or are you in your head voice? Right?
Exactly. Just as like one of the early bass lessons I got was like, yeah, okay, just play this note again and again, but play it in like different ways. And you can do that with your voice too. There are just different places that you can go to pull those different sounds, and that'll give you confidence, and it'll hopefully relieve some of the stress of what the outcome is, because you have more control. The other piece of it is for me, is that I've developed a warm-up routine. And I think all vocal warm-up routines, they sound crazy. Like, you sound absolutely nuts. If I'm driving to a gig is typically where I do my warm-ups.
Yeah, same here.
And I always like catch myself at a red light and someone's next to me, and I'm sure they hear me doing, something like, or something crazy like that.
Yeah.
And they think, let me stay away from that. That guy, he's got a problem. But whatever those warm-up routines are, and there's, hundreds of them out there, find one so that when you do sing, especially in a live situation, that you're already warmed up, that your voice isn't just working through its kinks in the first song, the first, words that are coming out of your mouth. And similar to like where the breath is coming from, think about, the mic positions, all these other things that we think of as a basis when we talk about our amp and our bass. And it's the positioning of our head, of our neck, our body, our posture,
all those things kind of go into your ability to deliver sound and, hold a note in a way that's pleasant, right?
Exactly. So this way you have more control. And I think the big thing in general is that if you haven't tackled this and you're thinking about tackling it, just remember the value that you bring to the table to any band when you can be that second voice or sometimes the third voice,
right,
on a harmony. It is a game changer. It really adds a lot to the performance, and for your audience, there's just something there that brings it to a next level. And for you to be able to be a part of that, that's like value that you're adding. You're no longer just the bass player, but you're the bassist that can also do that.
Right. I mean, that in itself can absolutely just get you gigs. The fact that you can come in and have good harmonies.
Yep.
You know, there's a facet to this that requires that you have some ear for harmonies, right? And you know, as we said at the top, right, we're not here to teach that, I think, as a practical site, but
right.
knowing things about chords, right? Knowing how harmonies work, and being able to hear the harmony in a song is really important. I would say, you know, one other thing you can do to kind of emphasize your ability to do that is when you're singing these songs or singing your favorite songs, a thing that's helped me quite a bit is just making up harmonies that don't exist in the recording and singing them and knowing, you know, when they're right and when they're not. And, you know, you kind of have to know when they're right and they're not. There's this kind of aspect of like, you can't, like, it's hard to teach somebody to do that. You either have it or you don't. And if you can't invent harmonies, then just take the next step below that, which is learn the harmonies that are there, right? Listen to things by, I mean, you know, one of my all-time favorite bands is Queen. And, you know, that's like a master class in harmonizing, right? Or the Beatles, right? Anybody like that. And, you know, frankly, I think if I'd not grown up listening to that music, I might not be as adventurous about singing and playing at the same time. So, you know, definitely check out bands that use a lot of harmonies, and, you know, try and bring that into your band situations. Cause like you said, the ability of a band to deliver harmonies live that are good is always going to set that band so far above the median. And, you know, people who are listening, they may not know why, but when they hear a band, they love it. And the reason is people love the human voice. We're evolved in a way to love the human voice. Like, we love hearing humans.
Right.
So, I mean, it's the thing that you can do that just kind of like takes it to the next level.
That's right.
Well, so that seems like a good place to stop for today. So we hope you guys have enjoyed this episode, and we hope that you'll be able to take some of our advice today and maybe apply it to your practice routines and learning to play and sing accurately. We'd love to hear from you about your experience doing this. Have you had any occasions where you've gotten gigs because of your ability to play and sing? Are you encountering any difficulties, or are you finding any successes in learning how to do this in practice? We would love to hear from you. Please feel free to visit our website at practicalbass.com. You can email us at podcast@practicalbass.com, or simply visit us on Facebook or Twitter. You can find us there as Practical Bass, or on Google Plus or Instagram. And we will be back next week with another episode of Practical Bass to explore a topic that helps you, the working bassist, elevate your gigs and gear. You can find us on iTunes, on Google Play Music, on Stitcher Radio, or through your favorite podcatching app. So until next time, I'm Paul Frields.
I'm Dave Guzman.
And this has been Practical Bass.
Thanks for listening.
So what does your wife think about all this podcasting stuff? Is she like into it, or she's like, I don't understand why you're wasting your time with this loser over at his house? Like,
no, she actually,
she's like, you're going to be a star.
No, never. That never happens. She keeps my ego at bay. She's really good at that.
Yeah.
I'm a dreamer, you know.
Right.
She's got to, like, someone's got to balance that out.
Somebody has to anchor you.
Yeah.
Keep that balloon from flying off.
Right.
I'll be your ballast, sir.
She's more like a pin.